Welcome to the show. Did you know that basically if you have an LLC or an S Corp, if you don't file a specific form, you could be fined $500 a day? If you didn't know about that, we're going to be discussing that with my special guest, Wayne Scully, who is a trusted CPA of the show. Wayne, introduce yourself. Thank you for being on the show.
I appreciate you having me again. This is like probably the second or third time, I believe. Maybe more like fourth time. So my name is Wayne Scully, and as Evan said, I'm a CPA, been licensed for 20 plus years. I specialize in work with realtors and real estate investors to help them save money on taxes, right? So whether you have a tax issue, a tax problem with the IRS or state, or you're just paying just way too much in taxes, I can help you fix that. And if you don't mind, Evans, I'll plug my two books. I do have two books.
Please do.
21 tax topics. I guess the camera, but 21 tax topics to stay compliant and save money. That's a resolution book. So if you have tax problems, you need to read this book. I hope you don't have those, but if you do, you need to read this book. And this one is for realtors and real estate investors. Tax Notes for Real Estate Pros, the ultimate tax guide for New York landlords, flippers, and real estate investors. So if you have a real estate business, this book is a book you need to get a copy of. So these are available on Amazon.com for sale. And you can also go to getmytaxbook.com for this one. And you can go to my website, www.wscullycpa.com, and get it for free. Evans, I want to take up a whole bunch of time and talk about me. I want to get to your questions and get those, answered.
Well, the reason why I wanted to have you on this is because of this thing called the BOI, and it's basically the Corporate Transparency Act, which takes effect at the end of this year, beginning of next year. So I wanted to ask you basically, what is the BOI report and why is that required under the Corporate Transparency Act? What exactly is it?
They want to know more about what you're doing. Really, honestly, it's really to combat fraud, identity theft, all types of illicit affairs that, bad actors will perpetrate on others. So the more they know about your business is the more they can protect you and the public, right? So it's required, as you said before, for certain businesses, right? Just for transparency, to increase transparency. That's pretty much it. So they want to know more about the beneficial owners of the business, and that's the crux of it. And as long as you provide that information, you're good to go.
All right. So what type of entities are required to file a BOI report?
LLCs, corporations, including S corps, partnerships, are required to file. There's certain entities are exempt. So publicly traded entities are exempt. Government entities are exempt. Nonprofits are exempt.
All right, I have an LLC, but it's not active. I'm not doing anything with it. Do they still have to file, even though they're not doing anything with that LLC?
Even though the LLC has no activity, they still have to comply with those rules.
And it doesn't matter if the LLC is basically for real estate or for any kind of other small business or anything to that nature.
Yep, does not matter.
Okay. Are there any exempts? You already mentioned some of the exempts, but are there any other exempts that you didn't mention that people should be aware of?
Maybe not relevant to most people, but some CPA firms are not required to file that. I did file mine already, as I mentioned to you before we started the recording, because initially the thought was that this requirement was for January of this year. As it turned out, they pushed that to next year. So, there's some carve-outs for certain types of other entities, such as CPA firms, without generally required to file that.
All right, so we already mentioned what the deadline is. What happens if people or businesses that fail to comply?
As you said before, there's a $500 per day fine, penalty, if you want to call it that. I mean, that's pretty steep. My math is off right now, but that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, basically, that you're donating to the government.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. So if you don't file, that's a consequence. So cause and effect. You fail to file, then you'll get those fines. So you definitely want to avoid that. Side of caution, file. At least talk to someone about filing. If you're not required to, then they'll let you know. Make sure you get it in writing, so in case they do come back to say, hey, you should have filed, you have some documentation to support the fact that you were advised not to file, right?
Keep the receipts. Always keep the receipts.
Cover your assets.
There you go. All right. So how does this new law impact small businesses, startups, and corporations?
Well, I mean, they have to be in compliance. And again, it's to increase transparency and accountability, right? And of course, the compliance element of it is going to cost businesses, right? Which is like probably the worst part about it, because now you have to go hire someone if you can't be able to do it yourself. If you have a complex entity that has multiple beneficial owners, and maybe there's an owner that's another company or something like that, then it increases that burden, right? So, the compliance aspect of it will cost, but it's the cost of doing business. So that's the impact, the compliance, the cost associated with that, and then your business is out there now, even when it wasn't before, right? So most of this information, let's say an LLC, all corporations and LLCs are formed at the state level. So the feds don't really know much about those entities, right? Now they'll know. So that's the impact, the transparency and the compliance element or component.
All right, you already mentioned the nonprofits and the trust and the sole proprietors.
Well,
They're
certain trusts are required, like business trusts in your arena, real estate investment trusts.
okay.
Those will be required to file. But if it's a trust, like I just form a trust to protect my personal assets, I'm not required to file.
I just wanted you to clarify that, but I'm glad you mentioned that. Now, how does the BOI report affect privacy for business owners and investors?
Yeah, I mean, FinCEN, that's going to manage this thing. That's a sub agency under the Treasury Department. They're supposed to be protecting people's identity, just like the IRS, right? The IRS is also under Treasury. So yes, you will have to provide personal identifiable information like your name, your social, your address. They will have that, and possibly your date of birth. So I mean, that's the way it is. There's no way to get around it. They're trying to identify you. You can look at it from two perspectives. You could look at it, well, they're invading my privacy, or you can look at it from the perspective of you're being protected. Because at least if someone tries to do something nefarious with your entity or does it, you'll have support that you actually file this thing and you are the owner, not someone else who's purporting to be you. So I think there are different ways to look at this, right? I always try to look at it from a positive point of view as opposed to the negative. But yes, you will have to, provide personal identifiable information to the government, which it's already at the state level. So
You can think of this as a checks and balances, I guess. That's the whole purpose of this, is basically just to make sure you are who you say you are.
it's like when I was in banking, we used to have this thing called KYC, know your customer. So they want to know who you are. And as I said before, it's a way to protect you as well, to protect the public, but also protect you as well. So in case something hits the fan, they know where you stand.
All right, so we're going to go into the compliance stuff that usually comes involved with these things. What key information is needed? What key information needs to be included in a BOI? You have mentioned ID.
So your full name, your date of birth, your address, unique identifying number for each owner. Even if you have an LLC or a partnership or something, of course, those entities have an EIN, but they want to know about the owners. So that means you have to provide your social security number. Or if you're a foreign person, you have to provide your tax ID number, your ITIN. So that's what they're primarily going to get from you.
Now, some people have stuff structured where they have one LLC or a corporation, and then they have another one underneath that, and another underneath that. If you have multiple, or they're underneath an umbrella, do you have to file separately for each one, or basically, how does that work?
You will have to file, because if I have two entities that I personally I'm a owner of, and I had to file separate for each entity. So even though they're owned by me, that's why it's good to have a unique identifier. When you go to the FinCEN website to sign up for this, you'll be able to get a unique identifier. When you create that account, if you will, the information gets populated because it's already there. So that's like the master account, and then below that you'll have these entities that you own. You may be able to avoid the redundancy of having to put the same information over and over. But these things are being updated all the time. I can't say I did a year ago for myself. I can't say it's going to be the same now as it was then. But again, you have the option. It's not required. You have an option of getting a unique identifier that basically speaks to only you. When you go into log in, it'll bring up all your entities. Yeah, but about 8 months ago, I think it was like February or so, March, whenever they opened up. I think there was like a point where they didn't open up in the beginning of the year, but close to the beginning of the year, they opened it up to allow people to go in and start doing this. And I was probably one of the first people to do that.
So how long would you say from start from finish when you started basically the application process? Yeah.
It took maybe about 30 minutes or so, 30, 35, maybe 40 at the most.
Well, knowing now what you know before back then, basically, you know exactly what the information is. Would it be faster if you could do it over again now?
Yeah, I would say so. In fact, you probably should know this, that, or people watching, listening should know that at some point in time, if the ownership changes, you'll have to update that. That's the only requirement that you, once you do it, it's like one of those things where you do it, you set it and forget it. But if the ownership, the business, the owners of the business, the beneficial owners change over time, you'll have to go and update it for
Okay.
that to account for those people.
I'm glad you're mentioning if they need to update stuff. So then my next question is, what are the steps for new or existing business take to prepare for this kind of compliance?
Get a good professional. I mean, if you're not comfortable doing, you can certainly try to do this on your own, but if not, definitely get a professional to work with you on this. Okay, gather all your documentation. But obviously, you should know. Me, I know my social security like the back of my my hand. I know my driver's license number like back of my hand. But anyway, but yeah, once you have the information about the business itself, right? Obviously, of course, you need to know the formal name of the business. The business is EIN or whatever. And then your personal information, you're pretty much good to go. You know, you have to know all the owners of the business and their information. So if one person has been assigned this, or they're passing it on to an attorney or whatever to do this, they would need to provide that information to that person. So yeah, so all your personal identifiable information, PII, plus the business information. That's what you pretty much need for that.
You kind of answered my next question, which was going to be, are there any best practices for businesses to ensure accurate and timely filings? You kind of mentioned get the right professional, get all
Right
the
profession.
information gathered. And is
Yep.
there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think make sure the information is I guess don't make any errors on that. Like if you don't know your social security number offhand, make sure you get a copy of the card, right? So you can actually put the right number. You know what I mean? You don't want to transpose a digit or something and then it gets flagged or whatever. So just make sure the information is correct to the best of your knowledge. Try to get source documents to support that, and I think you should be good to go with it.
All right, I got a couple of last minute questions. Basically, how can a CPA such as yourself help businesses navigate the BOI compliances?
Well, as I think I'd said this to you outside the recording that I don't personally do this for clients, and I'll tell you why. And I think I promise to tell you why in the beginning, because this type of stuff is not dealing with the IRS. The IRS is a separate arm, right, of the Treasury Department. So this kind of falls under legal work. And there are accountants, other CPAs that are doing this type of work. My liability carrier has said basically not to do it. And let's say
Gotcha.
I'm accused of the unauthorized practice of law or something, they won't have my back.
Same thing in real estate. Basically, we do not give legal advice. That's what the
Right.
lawyers are for.
I tend to, I mean, it's probably, as I said before in the beginning, I did this, like I started looking at this in the beginning. Things do change over time. But when they told me that, this could be a potential, risk, I decided not to offer it as a service. But your question was, how do they prepare for that? Yeah, just provide information that I mentioned before. Make sure you have all the documentation about the business or businesses, about all the owners. I think that's the most of it. Current address or whatever. Make sure you have that as well, because if just in case they do send a piece of mail, it gets to the right person, or persons. So I'd say that's what you want to do as well.
I'm really glad we're doing this right now because obviously I would just assume this is a CPA question that you would,
And as I said before, it's possible that there are CPAs that will do it. Just speaking for myself, maybe I'm being overly cautious, but my understanding from my liability carriers is the practice of law, so we should stay away from it. So I can't speak for every CPA out there. Maybe there's some that'll do it. Unless I hear something other than that, I'll stick to my guns and I won't do it. I need to revisit, since it's so close to that time. I need to have that conversation with my carrier and see if it's now something that we can actually, if they'll cover me just in case something happens.
well,
But
I'm glad we're doing this. Like I said, I just want to give people an idea of who to speak to about this subject. So obviously, it's a CPA. It could be an attorney who specializes in this, and also there's business advisors out there that you should seek out that might be able to point you in the right direction.
I mean, and then you can also go to the FinCEN website. It can help you to go through the process. If there may be perfectly good reasons why you want to do it, want to have someone else do it, right? But I'm just saying, if you have a very basic, you're the sole owner of an LLC, it's just you and there's nothing going on, you could probably do it yourself if you feel that so inclined. But certainly there's value in working with someone to collaborate with them on that, like a CP or an attorney, because they're up to date on the guidance. Sometimes really read legalese. It's difficult for the common folk to interpret that, and things are always changing, always evolving. So who knows? Another thing too is maybe in the next administration, maybe this will go away. I don't know.
This is what's stated
Right.
now.
Right. I agree. My point is that it's
Yeah.
always good to connect with someone who's supposed to be on the pulse of this stuff to get the right guidance so you can do the right thing. So
I'm glad we're doing this. I want to give people some resources just in case they were not aware that this new ruling is happening. I am going to give them some resources that they can look into if they have any questions. But if they have any tax questions, I want them to make sure that they reach out to Mr. Wayne Scully. Could you promote your books one more time, just in case they didn't
yeah,
hear?
my books. So this one is 21 Tax Topics to Stay Compliant.
No, it's good. It's clear.
21 Tax Topics to Stay Compliant and Save Money. Smart, save money and reduce taxes. That's a resolution book, right? So if you have a tax problem, you owe there's a ton of money. I've had great success. I'm helping people with that stuff. You can see me on various social media platforms. I'm sure Evans will provide it to you.
Yes.
Whether it's TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, I regularly post my wins or wins for my clients. So that's one pillar of my practice, resolving tax problem. The other one is tax planning, which is what this book is about, right? And this is geared towards the folks who are in the real estate business, whether you're a broker, an investor, or anyone like that, I should say. You definitely want to get this book. Both of them are available on Amazon.com at a fee. And then if you want it for free, you can definitely check out my website, www.wscullycpa.com, or you can check out my other site, getmytaxbook.com, for this one. And you need to give me a call. My number is 718-938-4601. I'm pretty easy to talk to. Evans, whenever you call me, I respond to you, right?
Yes, you do.
Maybe not immediately, but I do respond to you in a pretty timely fashion.
Just to let the audience know, basically, we're filming this on Friday night around 8 something. So I was able to get him on his schedule, but he's committed. Basically, when he says he's going to do something, he's going to do something.
I'm gonna do it. I get it done. So that's one thing about me. So you can definitely put that money in the bank if you will. I don't think people should be scared or too overly worried about it. It's something you got to do. It's just like filing a tax return. The fine is still pretty hefty, but they're probably more serious consequences to fudging your returns or something like that, as well. So definitely, do what you need to do where that's concerned. Speak to the right pros, whether it's an attorney, speak to a CPA or whatever. I don't profess to know everything, so definitely reach out to the person you trust the most on these types of matters. And if you have a question about tax prep, planning, resolving tax problems, I'm the guy to talk to. Again, www.wscullycpa.com, and I'm waiting to help you.
And folks, I'm your real estate agent when it comes to buying and selling, investing in real estate here in New York. You're thinking about Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Long Island, even the city. If you're thinking about buying, selling, or any of that nature, basically give me a call. You can reach me on my cell phone, 917-975-5985. Our website is mynyhomesales.com. And a lot of people going through a lot of things, whether you're going through probate, going through divorce, you're relocating for financial reasons, or you're just relocating for whatever reasons, basically. We help people throughout the process when it comes to real estate. And the purpose of these videos that I'm doing here with Mr. Wayne is to make sure that people are aware of what's going on currently and that they're not caught unaware. Like, we want to make sure we save you money and making sure you're not spending extra money, $500 a day next year. A lot of people could be using that $500 a day basically to put into other things, hopefully like putting into their bank accounts to buy a new home later on, or saving that money for a down payment for the kid later on. Whatever your choice is, but we just want to make sure that you're saving money, and whatever we can do to help you, that's what we're doing here. Again, I want to say thank you, Wayne, for basically doing this with me.
If they want to go and check out, we've done a podcast episode on this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, 2 episodes in our podcast. It's called Black Pros and Money Honey. So I actually have that podcast I do with an attorney.
Okay.
His name is Vernon Mann. It's my good friend Vernon Mann. And so we did a podcast on the BOI. We did two of them, I believe. I think we did one in early in the year. We did one in March or May of this year.
Okay.
So if people want to go check that out, just go to Spotify or whatever, and search the podcast Black Pros and Money Honey. And also on my YouTube channel, I've done videos on the BOI as well. So BOIR. So people can go and check that out as well. So if you want more information, or maybe, the rules could vary, as I said before, but it might be worth your while going to check that out.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned all that stuff. Again, people, we're putting this information out there for you, so you're not ending up spending next year $500 a day. And it could be more, because as the time is recording, they did mention they might have some other stipulations and other fines. So remember, we're here to save you money and also be the voice of reason when it comes to anything real estate on my side, and also tax and anything basically revolving anything around tax and finances. Talk to me, Mr. Wayne Scully. Talk to me about the real estate. With that being said, we want to say happy holidays, Mr. Scully. Thank you so much for doing this again.
See you and your viewers.
All right. Happy holidays, people.